Welcome to the Retire Right podcast with Larry Heller. You deserve complete financial advice. There's no acceptable alternative if you want a plan to live well and on your terms. Complete financial advice equals complete peace of mind. Now, let's get into this week's podcast episode.
Hello and welcome to Retire Right with Larry Heller from Heller Wealth Management. Today's episode is entitled Retirement Paycheck, and I'm very interested to see what that's all about. Larry, how are you today?
I'm doing terrific, Eric. How about yourself?
I'm doing great. I hear we're talking about paychecks today, and it's the title is Retirement Paycheck. I know that I like my current paycheck. I do like getting paid, and I'm not even close to retirement yet. So what is a retirement paycheck?
Yeah, so everyone likes getting paid, and you've received your paycheck, either once a week or maybe every other week for maybe 40 years.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden you retire, and that paycheck stops, and you're like, "Whoa! How do I get money to pay my bills in my account because nobody's giving me a paycheck anymore? I have to figure out, how to do that." We work with a lot of clients, that transition from the working world into retirement world, and not having that regular paycheck, it just takes a little while getting used to. And what we found is when we were able to recreate the monthly cash flow, and we're calling it retirement, a paycheck to them with the kind of the same amount each time, it's a calming effect. People aren't figuring out exactly, or feeling, hey, I'm taking too much money out of my account. Because that's the one thing, I don't care how much money you have when you retire, you want to know that you're comfortable with whatever you're spending is going to last throughout your retirement. Mm-hmm. So it's a great way of looking at and being able to feel comfortable that no matter what's going on in the stock market or the world out there, that they're getting this regular paychecks, and they know that once they've done a plan with those regular, monthly checks, they feel a lot more comfortable. That's why we like this idea. A lot of it's just psychological sometimes, but it seems to work with our clients.
Yeah, I like the idea of getting, a retirement paycheck. So how do you go about figuring out how to get them that paycheck so it does kind of close that gap?
Yeah, so when people retire, a lot of times they look at, okay, I want interest from my accounts. And, this is not the early 80s, Eric. You're going to be a little bit too young maybe for this, but I do remember interest rates at 12%, CD rates at 12%. And people just taking their portfolios and making enough interest and living off that interest. And that interest was technically their retirement, check. Well, now, rates are a lot lower. And, if people are going to try to live off the interest, they may, risk and, stretch for yield and not really look at the investment they're getting in, and they're dangerous about some of the risk that's involved. Mm-hmm. We want to kind of avoid just stretching for interest. So, so how do you do this? Well, the first thing is really trying to figure out how much do you need? And this, actually, I'm going to show a little bit later that this will actually help that going forward and really determining whether you've thought how much you need or how much you're going to spend in retirement is accurate. Mm-hmm. So you want to kind of figure out what you think your monthly expenses are going to be or weekly expenses are going to be. So once you have that number in your mind, so let's just say it's $10,000 a month that you think you're going to need, you would subtract out any what we're calling your fixed payments, a Social Security payment, or if you're lucky enough to have a pension. So I'm going to make it nice and easy. Let's say your Social Security is $2,000 a month and your pension is $1,000 a month. So from your $10,000, now you subtract out your Social Security and your pension, and now we know that you need $7,000 a month. Mm-hmm. So if each month your Social Security check and your pension check goes into your checking account, now we suggest you move from your savings account into your checking account the other $7,000 each month. you're giving yourself a $7,000 monthly paycheck.
Got it.
When added to your Social Security and your pension, that's your $10,000 that you're going to need to live on each month.
Mm-hmm.
And the one interesting thing is here, a lot of some people, I mean, the engineers and the accountants out there, they may come to us with a detailed budget and down to the penny, but most people don't really know exactly what they're spending. So this works as another way of kind of figuring that out. So let's just play this out. You do this for a year. You start on January 1, and your balance in your checking is, let's say, $5,000. Mm-hmm. And you move your $7,000 in each month, and your Social Security and your pension. And after the year is over, you didn't have to move anything else in, and your checking account is grown to $10,000. So really, what if now you have spent $7,000 a month for 12 months, $84,000, and you had $5,000 build up in there. So you really then spent $79,000 for the year. So after the year, you know exactly what you spent.
Oh, you mean, so Larry, I'm sorry. So let me clarify.
Sure.
So you're saying when you say how much you've actually spent, you're not including what you had from the Social Security and pensions. So you're talking about what you actually took out of your account is $79,000, even though you spent the extra $36,000 from your Social Security and pension added together.
Correct. I mean, you can combine them together and say, hey, I spent $120,000 or $115,000 because I had $5,000 left over. So you can look at it. You can look at it either way.
But what you're truly after is what they're taking out of their account to supplement.
Correct.
So got it. Okay, that makes sense. Yep.
And let's just say, not everything is each month. So is equal. So let's say you had a big insurance bill one month and you had to put extra money in. What you do is you just write that down. Mm-hmm. So if you had 2 months that you actually moved another $5,000 in, at the end of the year now, okay, I moved $7,000 each month, but I had to add another $10,000 in. I add those 2 additional payments, and now I've seen what I've spent for the year. Mm-hmm. So it'll probably take you a full year, but after that year, you'd know exactly what you've spent for the entire year without having to go in and look at everything that you've, spent on in detail. Now, it still may be important to do that, but this gives you an idea of what you're spending in total.
No, that's great because, like you said, you don't have to look at every small little thing, but even at the end of the year, you may look back and say, wait a second, I spent more than I thought I did because of the fact that since you're not going to work every day, you have more time on your hands. Therefore, maybe your entertainment budget goes up. You're going out to a few more movies during the course of the month, or you're going out to lunch more than you normally would have, when you were working and didn't have those opportunities. So it can make a big difference. So that's great.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, we usually find it doesn't take a whole year. So what happens is after like 2 or 3 months, mm-hmm. you need to adjust this up or down.
Yeah. Because
the first time is really just an estimate. So if there's too much money building up in your checking account, we'll recommend, reducing it by $1,000 a month. Or if you have to put extra money in each month, you need to increase it. So the first year is really a test to kind of figure it out. In the first couple of months, you may have to tweak it, up or down. But it gives you an idea exactly what you're spending for exactly what you just said. People may be spending more money than they think. Yep. So it gives them a comfort level that their money is coming in. And if you've done the right planning and that number, they've done a retirement plan for them, and that they're staying within their expectations, they feel much more comfortable rather than, this month I have to go in and move 20,000 over, mm-hmm. and then they don't do anything for a couple months and they move something else over. One, they don't know how much they're spending, and 2, they're really getting uncomfortable with continuously, haphazardly just pulling money out of their investment portfolio.
Yeah, makes sense.
That's what we talk about is recreating or creating a retirement paycheck. Mm-hmm. There's a couple of ways of actually creating this, this paycheck, because, where do you pull the money out of? Mm-hmm. You need to, there's really kind of 3 different retirement portfolio strategy. One is really, kind of an, income approach. where you're getting enough dividends and interest from your investments, such as bonds or dividends on, mutual funds and large cap mutual funds in there. And sometimes what we find is people chase yield. They're looking at high yield corporate bond funds because they want, or long-term bond funds because they want a higher yield, because what they're doing is they're taking the interest that they earn and they're using that as their retirement, their retirement paycheck on a haphazard type of strategy here. And although they may be getting a coupon, they may be getting interest, the value of their investments could be going down, especially in an environment like today with a rising interest rate environment or a little bit of a correction in the stock market.
Got it.
So, two other approaches, that are out there. And one is really just a total return approach. You stay fully vested. You decide how much money that you want to keep in the stock market, how much you want in bonds. And each month you pull out of that investment account what you need. So you're always invested. The nice thing about that is when things are going well, you're maximizing what you could make because you're making money either in the stock market or the bond market. The downside to that is when we go through some little corrections or little burps or things like that, you have to sell to raise money to get your retirement paycheck, and you may be selling at an inopportune time.
Oh, it's true.
We look at kind of a third, strategy, called a bucket strategy, which we've had a separate podcast on. So I'm not going to kind of go into that. But, one of the bucket strategies is to keep enough money in cash to give yourself a retirement paycheck, anywhere between 1 to 3 years, depending upon the environment. And you're kind of drawing down your cash into your checking account, and your other investments will continue to go up. So it's another strategy. That's the strategy that we like here at Hello Wealth Management, is kind of a bucket strategy.
And it sounds like, and you covered a little bit about this, but each one of them has pros, each one of them has cons, and it really is something that you tailor for each one of your clients.
Yeah, so I mean, I just explained, 3 different strategies that we've seen people do in retirement. We kind of use the bucket strategy and tailor that for each specific client.
That makes sense.
The bucket strategies worked really well for us because, historically the stock market, when they've had a correction, usually recoups in 3 years. So even in 2008, we were able to get on the phone with every one of our clients and say, hey, your retirement paycheck's going to continue tomorrow because we have that money in cash, and it's going to continue next week, and it's going to continue next year. We have 3 years before we have to worry about that. So you can keep on going, living your lifestyle, and keep getting your paycheck each month. And that was really comforting to a lot of clients in 2008.
Absolutely. That takes a huge weight off their shoulders. Yeah. All right. So what's next?
So there are a couple, issues to decide when you're creating this, paycheck. What do you do with the dividends and the interest that come from your investments? Do you put it in cash? Do you reinvest that? How much cash needs to be in that short-term bucket? When interest rates were really low and the stock market was doing well, and so a couple of years ago, when we wanted to have some cash in our short-term bucket strategy, we had clients saying, why should we leave so much cash in there making so little money? And the point was because we don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. So deciding what clients' risks are, deciding what the environment is. So in 2009, 2010, we probably had less in cash. Now we probably have more in cash, closer to the 3 years rather than the 1 year. And every client is a little bit different. How much cash are they getting from their investing? Are we reinvesting it, or is the cash going to replenish that bucket? Is there going to be something else that comes in the door from some other investment or a sale of property? So knowing where your cash is coming from, is very important. Also, distributions. How often, do you want this? Some clients like it monthly because they can budget. We actually have a few clients that they're not comfortable with themselves. So their retirement paycheck is weekly. So we actually have conversations with clients and, try to determine what you're comfortable with going into the accounts.
What I like, Larry, what I really like about what you're saying as far as the bucket, strategy approach and the things that you do with your clients and the how much cash, how often, the beauty of it is if they have 2 years worth of cash ready to go to pay them and something does happen, you're able to monitor it. They're able to monitor it the entire time to say, okay, we haven't seen it come back quite to where we want it to be at the market, that is. And so maybe they're going to slow down on a little bit of their spending and tighten the belt slightly. They don't have to alter their entire lifestyle, but it gives them the option. Maybe that 2 years worth of cash is now it's going to last 2.5 years, ride that storm out a little bit farther. And there's no adjustments needed with the cash because there's no risk to that specifically. So I like that.
Well, but actually, that's not actually what we tell clients. We actually tell clients you can continue to spend what you're spending. You don't have to tighten your belt up because one, historically, we knew the market has recovered within that 3-year time frame. So there'll come a time where we will be able to sell some equities to replenish cash.
Okay.
Two, the dividends and interest they're getting from their stocks and their bonds is also going to replenish the cash.
Oh, that's true.
So sometimes so that could stretch out how much cash and how many years that they're going to need. And we didn't talk about the second bucket, but the second bucket is their bond bucket. Let's just say we went past 3 years, which hasn't happened, but let's say we went 3 years. We can dip into their bond bucket and take money out of their bond buckets. The only thing you really have to be convinced and convicted of is, will the stock market over long periods of time, 10 years, go back to historical numbers? So by the end of 10 years, you'd be able to pull out of your third bucket. So you don't have to change what you're spending in this type of environment. Now, psychologically, some people may decide to do that, but the whole strategy and what worked in 2008 is that you don't have to change your lifestyle.
Well, that's even better news. I like your plan better than mine. I think you should be the professional. Wait, you are.
Right. So what would happen is maybe in a total return approach or an income only approach, that's what the first thing that people would do. And all this is a short term. We're looking at they retire at 65. We're looking at their plan over a 30-year time frame. We're not looking at their plan over a 1 or 2 or 3-year time frame. And that's what people get sucked in on and say, oh, I got to do this because this is what's happening. So we're looking at the big picture.
Got it. The accounts that they're choosing, how do you figure out which account to withdraw from?
Yeah, so that's, again, that's another good topic for a podcast, and I think we've talked about that once before. But you want to look and see, do you take it out of your what we call qualified accounts, your retirement accounts? Do you take it out of your non-qualified accounts? Or if you have a Roth, which is a tax-free qualified accounts, which ones do you take it out of? Traditionally, everyone has said take it out of your non-qualified, let your retirement accounts build up until you're 70 and a half when you have to take money out. But that may not be the best case. You may be in a much lower tax bracket because you delayed your Social Security. So you may be in a 0% tax bracket. So it may make sense to take some money out of your retirement accounts early. The paycheck may come from a couple different places. Every client is different. Every situation is different. Every tax bracket is different. We're doing a lot of planning in this environment those few years. Plus, the tax law has changed, giving us a new 12% bracket, which may change in 2025 when the law sunsets and supposedly goes back to the old rates. Yeah. So, deciding which account to draw down from is really important. And there's a few different tax considerations on that. What tax bracket you're in, like I just mentioned, 12% bracket. But there's also capital gains, and this is really interesting. So if you're married and your taxable income is below $77,200, then your capital gain is, okay, wait for this, Eric. How much? 0.
Okay, I like that.
Okay.
Maybe.
So So let's say use the standardized deduction, which is 24,000, and I said 77,200. So you can actually make over $100,000 and pay no money on capital gains. So knowing, which account, or maybe we need to sell some investments that has gone higher. And if you are over 77,200, the capital gain rate is still 15%, relatively low to ordinary income that you may be when you're over 70 and a half and pulling money out of your IRAs. Knowing, looking at the tax consideration plus Social Security, depending upon your income, you may have 0% of your Social Security taxable, or 50% taxable, or 85% taxable. So you want to look at, the tax considerations.
All right. So how does this all come together to form a good plan for your clients?
Yeah. So I always talk about this is a big puzzle. Remember, the goal is to get a retirement paycheck. So the client just wants to know, okay, my money's hit the bank, hit my checking account every first of the month. I don't really want to know the ins and outs of this, but that's where we come in. So we look at the tax considerations. We look at the cash needs. We look at how much is in their qualified accounts. We look at, their investment portfolio. We look at their taxes, their expenses, and their timing. And not everything is nice and easy and smooth. What happens if a client's got a wedding that year? So we know there's going to be an extra amount that has to go out to the wedding. How does that get factored into their paycheck, so forth? So putting all these pieces together and putting the puzzle together, gives, clients, peace of mind, that they're going to not only get their regular paycheck, but they're going to get their regular paycheck also while minimizing their taxes and maximizing their returns.
Yeah, absolutely. There is no price on peace of mind. I'm sorry. If you can have peace of mind in your retirement and you don't have to worry about it, that would be great. I think that's probably the best outcome any client could have.
Absolutely. We call it our sleep factor. We have clients fill out a risk tolerance, on their investment side, but it's really, we want to know that they're sleeping well at night and they're not going to worry. So we kind of call the peace of mind, what's their sleep factor?
That's great. I love that. Larry, do you have any closing thoughts for us today?
Really, the one closing thought is you don't want to wait until after your paycheck from a real job is stopped. You want to start planning for this beforehand. So the day that you turn off one spigot, the paycheck that you get from your employer, you turn on another spigot, which is the paycheck that you're getting from your investments.
That sounds like a plan to me. Hey, and for all of you that are listening to this, obviously, as I'm going through this and I'm listening to Larry and learning, I have some confusion here and there, like my question, and he corrected me greatly, and I appreciate that. This is a puzzle, and I want you to re-listen to this podcast if you need to, but better yet, just call Larry. Call Larry and his team and ask them how they can take a look at your puzzle specifically and see if they can help you put the pieces in place where they go so you can have that peace of mind and you can get that sleep everybody needs a little bit more of. So, Larry, thank you so much for your time today. I appreciate it.
You're so welcome, Eric.
And all of you, thank you for listening to the Retire Right podcast with Larry Heller. If you have not subscribed to the podcast yet, I'm telling you, you need to. So click the subscribe button now below. This way, when Larry comes out with a new podcast, it'll show up directly on your listening device. This makes it much easier to share these podcasts with your friends and family. Again, thanks for listening. For everyone at Heller Wealth Management, this is Eric Johnson reminding you to live your best day every day, and we'll see you next time.